The disturbing find in the Epstein files discovered by artificial intelligence. The lead starts right now. More botched redactions, a high-profile name stepping back from his job, depositions with the Clintons set to begin tomorrow, the continuing steady stream of fallout from the release of the Epstein files coming up, and CNN on the ground in Mexico. See the aftermath of the beginning shot of the war with cartels, and the message from the Mexican president after President Trump tried to share credit for taking out a drug lord. Plus, the heated House race involving a Texas Republican refusing his colleagues' entreaty that he resign. This hour, the reporter who broke the story about Congressman Tony Gonzalez and his alleged affair with a staffer who then died by suicide. Welcome to The Lead. I'm Jake Tapper. We're going to begin in our Law and Justice lead. One huge political topic that has hounded the Trump administration got exactly 0 mentions from the president in last night's State of the Union address. More than 10,500 words in the longest State of the Union address ever. And not one of those words was Epstein. So tonight we are going to deliver the state of the Epstein files. My fellow Americans, the state of the Epstein files is unrelenting. There are major new developments that concern the Trump administration and prominent figures. First, Larry Summers, economist and former Treasury Secretary under President Bill Clinton, announced earlier today that he is going to retire from his Harvard professorship at the end of this academic year. Recently released documents have shown that Summers had years of personal correspondence with Epstein long after Epstein was arrested and imprisoned, including for soliciting prostitution, including from a minor. The Summers-Epstein emails showed that the former Harvard president made sexist comments and even sought Epstein's advice on pursuing an extramarital relationship with a subordinate. Summers in November said he was deeply ashamed about his relationship with Epstein. Then there is billionaire Bill Gates. The Wall Street Journal is reporting today that in a Gates Foundation town hall yesterday, the Microsoft co-founder apologized to staff at the event over his ties to Epstein and acknowledged that he had 2 affairs with Russian women that Epstein later discovered, but Gates said they did not involve Epstein's victims. In a statement, the group said Gates, quote, took responsibility for his actions. Now, in addition to Gates and Summers, the Democratic governor of the U.S. Virgin Islands, Albert Bryan Jr., is now also under intense scrutiny. Text messages reviewed by CNN show that in 2019, just months before Epstein's arrest, Epstein asked Bryan for help when officials were investigating unauthorized construction on Epstein's private island. Bryan told Epstein he asked island officials to pause enforcement, saying that he later asked the top environmental commissioner to recuse himself from the case. Bryan told Epstein in one text, quote, "We got you." It is unclear if any action was taken as a result, and the governor has not responded to CNN's multiple requests for comment. Again, this was long after Epstein was already known to be a convicted sex offender and a pedophile, based on his 2008 arrest. If that is not bad enough, in moments I'm going to share CNN's brand new reporting about how nearly a month after that massive release of files, our teams are still finding quite sensitive information, including photographs of children, one showing a young girl kissing Jeffrey Epstein on the cheek, as well as passport and other identifying information that had not been properly redacted as of just this week. More of that in a moment. But as the U.S. Virgin Islands governor and Larry Summers grapple with the Epstein fallout, so too does President Trump, despite his best efforts to ignore it and say that he has been perfectly and completely exonerated. Democrats, members of Congress, brought Epstein survivors and family members as guests to last night's address. They witnessed the longest State of the Union in known history, and they also witnessed the president not mentioning the word Epstein or mentioning the survivors of Epstein at all. And interestingly, we're also learning that the word Trump did not make the cut in multiple Epstein files documents released by Trump's Justice Department. A CNN review shows that dozens of FBI witness interviews from the Epstein investigation appear to be missing from the released files. How do we know this? An evidence log provided to attorneys for Epstein associate Ghislaine Maxwell includes serial numbers for about 325 FBI witness interview records. But more than 90 of those records do not appear to be present on the Justice Department website. Among those missing records are 3 interviews related to a woman who told agents that Epstein had repeatedly abused her, starting when she was approximately 13 years old. and who also accused Trump of sexually assaulting her. Now, of course, as we've said many times, inclusion of one's name in the Epstein files is not evidence of wrongdoing. Accusations against you in the Epstein files does not mean that those accusations are true. And Trump has consistently denied wrongdoing in connection with Epstein. In a statement, the White House called the allegations against Trump false and sensationalist and pointed to a previous Justice Department statement that some of the documents contain untrue and sensationalist claims against President Trump. Now, in terms of the missing files, a Justice Department spokesperson said, quote, "We have not deleted anything. And as we have always said, all documents responsive were produced," unquote. The spokesperson said the documents not included in the release were either duplicates, privileged, or part of an ongoing federal investigation. It does seem as though the more the Trump administration tries to ignore this elephant in the room, the more they put themselves into the path of the stampede. So let us start with the brand new CNN reporting. The Justice Department's Epstein files out for more than a month now, yet DOJ has failed to take down more than a dozen images that quite obviously should have been redacted. CNN senior reporter Marshall Cohen led this new reporting. Marshall, tell us what you found.
Jake, we've known for a while about redaction problems, but this is much more widespread than we thought. We worked with an AI company called Visual Layer to examine more than 100,000 images that the DOJ posted to its Epstein Files website, and we found more than a dozen photos, like you said, that should have been redacted but weren't and remained on the public DOJ site for nearly a month. We'll show you some of these pictures now, but keep in mind, CNN blurred the versions that you're about to see. But the unredacted versions were fully available on the DOJ site for weeks. There were pictures, like you mentioned, of a young girl kissing Jeffrey Epstein on the cheek. There were also non-sexual but unredacted images of other children and toddlers who are obviously minors. And there were several pictures of passports and driver's licenses revealing private data like ID numbers, addresses, and dates of birth. CNN asked the DOJ about these images on Monday, and by Tuesday, they were all taken down and replaced with properly redacted versions. Jake, let me read for you a statement that we got from a DOJ spokesperson about this. They said, quote, "Our team is working around the clock to address any victim concerns, additional redactions of personally identifiable information, as well as any files that require further redactions." Jake?
Marshall, bringing this back to the survivors, to the victims, you're also learning more about explicit images that the Justice Department also posted online?
Yeah, it's quite disturbing, Jake. We did find more than 100 sexually explicit photos that the DOJ did post online last month. They took these down pretty quickly, and some of them were replaced with redacted versions, which is what you're seeing right now on your screen, the redacted versions. But there were dozens of unredacted photos showing what appeared to be two naked teenagers on a beach. There were also multiple uncensored nude selfies, as you see here, and at least one image that showed Epstein with an undressed female. We spoke to legal experts and advocates for survivors of sexual abuse. Everyone is stunned that photos like these made it through the DOJ review, especially because top officials at the DOJ were adamant that they redacted every single woman in the Epstein files. Jake, advocates told us that this situation could re-traumatize the victims. And even though the DOJ did take the pictures down pretty quickly, the explicit images, we all know that once something's on the internet, it's basically impossible to get it off. Jake?
All right, Marshall Cohen, excellent reporting. Thank you. So joining us now is Sky and Amanda Roberts. They are the brother and sister-in-law of the late Virginia Giuffre, whose accusations against Epstein helped shine a light on his abuses and led us to today in many ways. Let me start. Sky, you were a guest at the State of the Union. How are you doing? What was that experience like?
It's a very surreal experience. I want to thank Representative Raskin and Subramaniam for having us as guests of honor. It was a privilege to be with them, but it was also it's really disturbing. I mean, being a part of the State of the Union, you're hoping that there would be some sense of acknowledgement there. We received none of that, and I think it didn't settle with me very well. I think the photos can show a lot of that from the victims and the survivors. It was, I think it was this visceral feeling inside of me that it was difficult to listen through, to be quite honest.
To me, it's unusual because I have to say, Amanda, President Trump could have stood there and said, the Republican Congress and me release these files, and we want justice for the survivors. And I know that some survivors are here and their family members, and we want justice for you. He could have said that, and he did sign the bill.
Yes. I think that's the point, right? He did sign the bill. It came to his desk and he signed the bill. And I think this is the parallel that we keep coming back to with Trump and this administration, Pam Bondi, is this idea that they want to help survivors. Oh, they're all about survivors, but their actions continuously show that they are in fact not. And it was a very simple thing. And like, there were so many people that were honored there, and like we felt that in that moment for them, and we clapped for them because indeed they should have been honored. Yeah. But there was something missing, because these survivors in Virginia Roberts Giuffre, they are American heroes too.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems to me, tell me if you think I'm wrong here, I understand that releasing millions of documents is a challenging task. It just seems that the redaction errors only go in one direction. Maybe that's not true, but from the reports we have, it seems like there are over-redactions of the perpetrators and under-redactions of the victims and survivors. Is that your impression too?
Yeah, I mean, you said it best. It is true. I mean, that's exactly what they're doing, and it's part of the tactic. It is. This is out of the playbook of Jeffrey Epstein. This is out of the playbook of the perpetrators out there, and now we're seeing it from our Department of Justice. Part of it is an intimidation factor. It's to intimidate the survivors. It's to intimidate us to stop. You know, hey, look, we have all the files. We're just going to expose you for this and show the world who you are. And you know, that doesn't go without saying. Like, there's threats. This is a safety issue. Like, this really impacts their lives for the, you know, and a lot of these women didn't want to come forward. A lot of girls didn't want to be unredacted in this. Some are okay with it. My sister, I can tell you, I mean, she's not redacted, but she would be okay with it in the sense of like, I'm already telling the truth, but that doesn't mean that all these other girls and women at the time want their stories exposed. So it's a safety risk for them. And it is incredibly like this, it's disheartening to see it from our own government, because that's the people that are supposed to protect us.
There are two facts that are pretty clear to me from covering this now for years and years. One of them is, and I probably should start saying these every time I cover the story, just because there's an accusation against somebody in these files doesn't mean the accusation's true.
Right.
It's just it's an FBI interview. Doesn't mean it's not, but it doesn't mean it is true. So nobody should say, nobody should hold up an FBI 302 interview and say, this proves X, Y, Z. The other one is, and this gets into the complexity of sex trafficking, which is some victims also turned out to be groomers and recruiters. That's just how sex trafficking works. It's uncomfortable, it's awful. But just because somebody is that doesn't mean they're not also a victim. And I have seen Trump allies attacking survivors who fill that role of having been both part of the trafficking but also a victim of it.
Yeah. I think that's so very important. I think there's a lack of education around sex trafficking and how it works, what the grooming process looks like, the intimidation factors to keep these young girls. Virginia was very open in her memoir, Nobody's Girl, about the toll that took from her personally, and the grooming that they did to make her like do those things. And this is why there needs to be an education on what grooming and sex trafficking looks like with the public, but our judicial system.
Yeah.
Because the other thing is to say, I know earlier they were saying, you know, he was completely exonerated and all these things, and of course not everyone is implicated, but there was no investigation.
Yeah, you can't be exonerated if there's not an investigation.
Right.
I'm not saying President Trump did anything, but like, I don't know, it just seems like there's a lot of interviews in there that were never followed up on.
Right.
Right?
Right. Yeah. How do we know if we've never followed the trail?
Well, we're going to keep trying to bring light and explain these things, because I think people think sex trafficking, oh, it's a bunch of girls in dungeons, and no, it's not what it is. It's much more complicated, and it has to do with predatory behavior. Thank you for being here again. We love having you. Thank you for giving Virginia a continued voice in American politics. She's a hero, and you two are heroes for carrying her torch. Thank you so much.